So, you are planning on moving to Thailand. Coming from experience, I think this is a great idea, but of course you need to be prepared for everything. In today's video, I am going over 7 challenges that you will face if you are an expat planning a move to Thailand long term. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Tempus TV. Unfortunately, we are socked in by the rain today, so we are coming to you from Tempus TV headquarters. Sorry if you can hear the thunder in the background. I think it kind of adds some aesthetic though. In today's video, like we said, I'm going over 7 challenges that you will face if you are planning a long-term move to Thailand. Now, I have touched on a few of these things in previous videos, but I think I either did a poor job of explaining them, or I think I left them open to interpretation in a way that might not really reign true. Now, some of these may be pretty obvious and maybe things you've already planned for, but especially number 7, I think that is one that I definitely wasn't prepared for, and I didn't really know until I got here and actually spent some time in Thailand. So make sure you stick it out through the video so you get full knowledge of everything that you might face if you're planning to come to Thailand long term. Number 1, hopefully you are doing some research on this already, but that has to do with visas and the whole immigration process in general. Now, if you're planning on retiring, maybe you just cleared your pension, so you got a little bit of money, you're planning on moving abroad, this isn't too big of a deal, but if you're closer to my age, if you're under that age of 50, it can be a bit harder to find visas that will work for you long term in Thailand if you are planning on staying over a few years. Now, if you want to come to Thailand for a year or two and then go on your way, this is much more easy and it shouldn't really be a problem from you. But if you're trying to be in Thailand for the rest of your time or an extended period longer than maybe a year to 3 years, finding the proper visa if you are under that age of 50 can be a little bit difficult. And once you are in Thailand, if you are going through the process to obtain some of these longer term visas, if you are trying to do it by yourself, it can be a little bit difficult. Now in America, we are definitely spoiled when it comes to a lot of filing paperwork and things like that. With most companies, it can all be done online, so it makes it a little bit easier. Thailand, especially with immigration, a lot of this stuff you have to do in person. Now, a lot of that paperwork will be translated, but there's certain things that are not, or the translation might be a little bit hard. So if you don't have a Thai helping you out, if you're not going through a visa agent or anything like that, this can be a little bit more difficult. Number 2 has to do with the cost of living here in Thailand. Now, don't get me wrong, if you are making an effort, a smaller amount of money, especially if you're still making a Western income or you have that Western pension coming in, it will go a lot farther for you in Thailand. But unfortunately, I do feel like with a lot of the information that is going out about the cost of living in Thailand, it can kind of make some people believe that you can come here on a small amount of income and have this crazy, wonderful life where you have all this extra money and you can essentially do whatever you want. Now, don't get me wrong, it does take a lot less money to have that type of life if you are in Thailand. But sometimes you can see these videos that are, on $1,000 a month, you can, have this crazy lavish life in Thailand. Now, don't get me wrong, you can survive here and you can be relatively comfortable on $1,000 a month, but you're not gonna be going to all these fancy restaurants. You're not gonna have the high-rise condo with the infinity pool. So that is one thing that I think you should definitely make sure you're prepared for. Just understand really how far your money is gonna take you. Now, in general, most things in Thailand are probably gonna be much cheaper than they are in your home country, but there are some things that are more expensive. Now, number 3 is a major struggle that I see quite a few people deal with. I have dealt with it myself personally quite a few times, and that just has to do with culture shock when you first come to Thailand. Now, when I was reading up on this, I just assumed that really had to do with, food and everything looking different. But after being here for a while, you start to understand that culture really means culture. How people were raised, how people deal with different situations, from confrontation to dating, all across the board. It is obviously just very different here than it is in the West, and that is something that can be kind of hard to understand until you're really here and you're interacting with locals and starting to build friendships and relationships with people. Just the dynamics are much different than the West. And for some people, they really enjoy this and lean into it. But on the other end of it, I have also seen people that are not crazy about it. It can be very hard for them to adapt, especially if you're trying to come here and build a family or build long-term friendships with locals. It can be much more difficult. The way that they deal with situations, the way that they deal with confrontations or disagreements is just generally much different than how we deal with a lot of that stuff in the West. Now, a lot of the times this can be refreshing. My 2 cents is I think a lot of locals in Thailand tend to deal with situations much more aligned to how I like to deal with them. But of course, this isn't gonna be the same for everybody. Next on our list of challenges is gonna be the language barrier. Now, I have mentioned before that if you're staying in touristy areas like Pattaya, Bangkok, Koh Samui, places where a lot of tourists are going, generally, this isn't gonna be too much of an issue. But maybe you're planning on moving somewhere more rural, maybe you wanna buy a house or things like that and kind of be out more in real Thailand, this can be an issue. Now, I don't really think with your day-to-day stuff, it's gonna be too much of an issue because of translators and things like that. It can be relatively easy to get everything squared away. But like we mentioned with visas earlier, when it comes to really official things or any type of documents, visas, maybe when it comes to paperwork, if you do plan on buying a house or, vehicles or getting licensed or registering stuff, that can all be very confusing if you don't speak Thai. Now, if you're already in a situation where you are stressed out and this is something you need to get done and you can't really figure out how to do it, and nobody there seems to understand what your issue is or what you're trying to get fixed, this can be very frustrating. Now, that unfortunately isn't something you can really prepare for until you get here, but it is something to kind of start wrapping your mind around before you come to Thailand. That way you're kind of set up to not be as stressed out and you know what to expect when you're walking into those situations. Now, one that I definitely didn't think about until I was in a situation where I needed it had to do with healthcare and insurance. Thailand does generally have very good healthcare, but when it comes to navigating the systems, just like we were talking about with visas and everything, the language barrier can kind of come into effect. And also, if you're not a Thai citizen, if you're planning on staying here long term, travel insurance might not be your best option, so you might try to navigate the world of Thai insurance, which can be a little bit more difficult, especially if you're not on a proper visa. If you're not here on a long-term visa, it can be very difficult to get approved for these programs and know how to implement them and which clinics to go to. So that could be something that is a little hard to navigate. If unfortunately you do have any persistent health problems or are gonna need consistent care for certain things, this is something that you should absolutely try to get squared away before you get to Thailand, because kind of tapping into our last point, unfortunately, if you're not Thai, sometimes these can be really hard to navigate. Another mistake that I did kind of make myself has to do with working in Thailand. Now, if you're planning on coming here and maybe you're not retired yet, you're still gonna need to get some income, minus you working online or maybe working for a foreign company that is based out of Thailand or, has offices here, it can be really difficult to find work opportunities in Thailand if you are not Thai. A lot of industries are reserved for locals, and if you want to be legit and have work permits and work visas and all that stuff, it's going to be very difficult to get these things to happen. Now, if you're going for some bigger companies or if you have a skill set that is needed in Thailand, this can be much easier. A lot of those jobs will help you out with a work visa. Some of them will even help you out with housing, getting you set up so you're all square. But maybe if you're a bit younger and you're used to bouncing around and maybe just picking up a bartending shift or working in a restaurant, things like that, unfortunately, the reality is here that isn't gonna be much of an opportunity for you here in Thailand. Now, of course, just like anything else, there are some people that try to wiggle around this, but I'm assuming if you're coming here long term, you wanna be set up and be legit. That way you don't have anything to worry about. So if you do plan on needing more income while you're in Thailand, I believe you should do your best to have that all set up and make sure you do some research on those industries that are reserved for Thais. And one thing to really think about if you are planning on coming to Thailand long term, even if you get the proper visas, you're all set up to stay here for an indefinite amount of time. When it comes to most locals, when it comes to the government, you will always be considered a foreigner. Even if you come here and start a family, you marry a Thai national, you have some babies, when it comes to the eye of the government and most locals, you will always be a foreigner. So sometimes it can feel very hard to feel integrated into your community. Now, this doesn't mean that people are gonna ostracize you or necessarily be rude to you or anything like that. But when it comes to your status in Thailand, there's no naturalization or anything like that. There's no real opportunities for dual citizenship. So at the end of the day, if you are planning on staying here long term, visas are something you're always gonna have to deal with. Immigration is always something you're gonna have to deal with. Now, of course, if that's not an issue for you and you're not worried about it, no big deal. But I do know some people, when they go to places, they like to feel like they've become part of the community or they're really integrated, and the more time they spend there, the less kind of hoops they have to jump through. But unfortunately, as of right now, that's not a thing in Thailand. Now, this may change in the future. Thai immigration rules and regulations are always changing, so do make sure you are keeping up on that. But this is one thing that I have seen some people struggle with, but it is just the reality. Now, most of these situations are gonna be a thing in most Southeast Asian countries, especially. It's not just specific to Thailand, but Thailand does have a certain set of circumstances that you should be aware of if you are planning a long-term move here. Now, personally, I don't think any of these are reasons to rethink your move. I just think these are things that you should be aware of to help your integration and help your move process just be a little bit more smooth when you know what to expect. If you are an expat currently living in Thailand, or maybe you're planning on a move and you have encountered some challenges that you might not have been ready for, feel free to drop them down in the comments. As always, this is a community thread, and maybe you can answer some questions for others who are thinking about doing the same thing. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Tempus TV. If you would like to see more and learn more from Thailand, why not click the video on screen right now? And like we always say, I hope you guys have a great day. We'll catch you in the next one.